In past videos we successfully tried on the guise of a crusader and a Roman legionnaire, so why not go to the East family of gunpowder Bushido anime. Today there will be no European showdowns. Let's live a day in the life of a Japanese samurai, and along the way are they a couple stereotypes, learn about their lives, and of course, let's understand the movie 47 Ronins with Keanu Reeves. Meet our samurai Xiang Tsuna. Yard 1610 and Shinji is the most common of about 400,000 samurai of that era. He serves his daimyo near the castle. His what is in Higa Prefecture. Shinji's task is as simple as 3 pennies. He guards the castle of the master for what in Europe long ago would have received the title of ordinary guard, but we are in Japan and here Xiang Tsu's samurai let and belonging to the lowest bone is slightly higher than the daimyo, still the same samurai but manager, both a castle and a small adjoining city at the disposal of daimyo from 100 to a couple of thousand of the same samurai as Xiang Chi. Turn up had like hundreds, like him unquestioningly obeys, shogun to chief samurai and ruler. Japan is currently legendary, and Ieyasu Tokugawa put down the end of the feudal warrior and gathered all power in their hands was still a bunch. Intermediate classes like standard bearers, vassals of fables, but on them in detail, we will not stop and take in. Example of a simplified diagram on Shinji Easy, armor in bow. After all, contrary to the prevailing prejudice, was not carried by all samurai. Plate armor and 2 swords is the lot. Swordsmen but were both ordinary and horse archers along with infantry. Samurai art of archery still lives in Japan, and according to him, there are many competitions. It is called chicken, and until the 16th century, was even superior to swordsmanship, but of course the traditional katana, sindi, also available. More precisely, 2 samurai at once. How? Privileged class carried 2 swords, attached to tanya, familiar to everyone. Small blade, wakizashi, that was usually worn on the belt. Even when Tokugawa's shogun banned in public and carrying weapons, samurai all could still carry 2 swords, where you wanted, as you could already understand, all concentrate power in fact on precisely in the hands of the samurai, and if you, it seemed that they were dominant castes in Japan of those times is absolutely right. Officially, the ruler of the Tokugawa divided the country into 4 estates: samurai, peasants and artisans, and merchants, but in the same decree in black and white, assigned an exclusive role, samurai, who stood above the rest. In what way did she express the so-called the right to kill and leave any samurai, starting from everything on and ending with our Shanzi guards had the right to execute, not showing due respect. Member of another class, offended by anything samurai, could kill a person on the spot and without any ships were killed even for a sidelong glance. But cases were so common that caused no surprise among simple hard workers. Actually, in Russian language there is an analogy to the word samurai, and this is a nobleman in Rus. They are also have absolute power over others' estates. The key difference is that any Japanese holding the title of samurai was a real warrior that everyone hummed. That our Xiang Zi was brought up the same by him from childhood, read out legends about samurai, Buddhist indifference to death, and erected a real cult of courage and also unquestioning obedience to his master. In the past, before how the samurai became a separate caste, in fact, they were feudal lords of their own lives, wealthy gentlemen who managed thousands peasants on his estate. But the same master, at the first call of the owner, put on armor, forgot its power, and walked on. The battle is somewhat reminiscent of a medieval Europe with its vassals, isn't it? A commoner could not become a samurai. It took a little to get the title of being born into a family pertaining to class so still and go through the cruel tests. For example, our Shinji father in his time ordered to spend some nights in the cemetery to strengthen the courage and spirit, and still constantly took with him a boy for public executions and night inspection, severed heads of criminals, and this obligatory stage young samurai must leave your sign on their heads to prove that he was here and passed the stage. Learning Shinji, like thousands of future samurai, were starved to force, barefoot in the snow, and work for days without sleep. It was believed that it tempered the spirit and brought up humility. But the main thing is that distinguished all samurai unquestioning implementation of Bushido code of rules and regulations. Japanese warriors, people often compare it to the code knights, and this is a mistake. In the knights code was rather unwritten, yes, and postulates often opposite. For example, attack on the enemy unexpectedly from the back for samurai was commonplace because the main victory, but at the same time any knight would consider it an insult. Of course, Bushido, the tale that any perpetrator committed suicide, the purest myth in this case, the samurai, and would quickly disappear as a showpiece. Suicide units, and more often samurai, just losing respect. Our Shinji is good guy and didn't break. Let it mean is that he is protected from the possible Suicide according to the code of life. Shinji belonged to Yes and Honey Samurai. Higher rank, and if it killed from a shogun, even higher. Samurai no commands received. All samurai. Daimyo committed ritual suicide. Jones. True, in these cases were rare. Daimyo died only in battle with his army, so Shinji as a whole insured against sudden death. But on what shisha does he live his life? Here's the bad news to count. How much rice could Shinji buy with his salary? Makes no sense, because Shinji-sama received a salary rice despite the fact that in Japan, were and gold and silver coins, part of salaries of taxes and other payments, done with rice in some provinces, accepted some money in some other, and therefore rice was a kind of currency with basic measure called koku. It was assumed that the amount of rice that a person could live a year, 1 koku, for example, weighed 150 kilogram or 400 grams of rice per day. Thick, isn't it? But this measure is quietly operating in Japan, and in modern times the truth is now equated to 180 liters. But not everything is so bad. Our Shinji Hao, ordinary soldier, a Shigeru, received about 20 to 30 koku a year. Eva Daimyo's income could reach up to million koku a year, and the more fortunate than Shinji Samurai included in Daimyo administration received somewhere around 100 koke, a lot or a little. Try to translate all in money, which, as we already mentioned, were too different, and the samurai themselves chose as they use and what to do with them. Take the most popular coin, which released the main house to cook offer, called deceit, and in 1601 Aben was somewhere around 30-40 koku, so rough rounding. Shinji a year earned one. Cheating, by the way, many of us are familiar with. Both of us. It is the reference to it that is located in the head of the Meowth Pokemon in legendary anime. Real deception was just that. Forms. Shinji he alone is 10 Cabana Illyrio, 2 varieties of coins smaller. Fortunately, a document has come down to us with listing the price of that era precisely in Rio. Remember that Shinji has 10 in a year, or somewhere in the 8/10 of a month, and let's see what you could buy for 1 Rio. The list is amazing. It's 750 trips to the bathhouse, 214 trips to the hairdresser, 158 watermelons, 278 books, 30 nights in a hotel, or 43 liters of juice. Also 1 Rio is 1,500 dango on a skewer, 140 kilos of meat, or 250 hikes. Theater. Even if we made a mistake and actually Shinji got half as much anyway, what could he buy in a month? 150 pairs of sandals in total is logical, keeping in mind that our guy, though, is in the lowest rank, but still samurai, and they were supposed to train at least 4 hours a day and be constantly under the shorn. Well-groomed and nice smelling Bushido implies that samurai should be an example for everyone, so Shinji bore the cost of beauty. Decent. If everything is so cool, where did it come from? Those same Ronin, and from the movie with Keanu Reeves. In fact, we already mentioned this verbatim. Ronin means samurai without a master, i.e., contrary to the essence of Bushido. Personality in Ronin turned out, depending on the causes of something. Host killed, Shate went bankrupt and could not pay, and someone himself sent to hell. Overlord staying free, though Bushido, and does not allow this possibility. In the real world it rarely happens like this, on paper. As a result, the government even led special care family law, and 8 returns to freedom-loving samurai periodically could leave the owner and come back if our Shinzo one day lose the lord, then turn into Ranina, and this is not a fun fate. Others samurai hate them, and in many ways even jealous. Ronin always exposed persecution and composed tales about them, exposing cannibals, but most often Ronin became mercenary bounty hunters or even merchants. No one bothered to leave the guys in business, though most of them are not left the path of the samurai. About this tells movie 47. Ronin, based on real history, in 1701, and Nidon was sentenced to seppuku for an attack on someone close to cast iron. Samurai Kiru, in the end 47 subordinates, daimyo of the same samurai as our Shinji, suddenly turned into Ronin. The situation came out non-standard, and it was stupid to ask the guys to do ritual suicide, so on them scored, and the newly minted wounded opposite, smeared with gray hair, decided to arrange ritual and legal revenge for the owner. The guys lulled Kira's vigilance, pretending to have drunk themselves, married, and generally happy with the life of Ronin and themselves. On the contrary, they planned revenge, which successfully completed in 1703. As a result, Cast Iron was waiting for a stalemate with one side of the Ronin and killed his entourage. What is the death penalty for? On the other hand, they followed the Bushido code to the end, for which we were adored and simple by the people. In the end, he allowed the guys commit ritual suicide, leaving only the youngest alive. But the fate of most of the samurai was not so romantic. Thundered feudal wars in the countryside. Violent RU attacked Nina and neighbors in the face of the Chinese and Koreans periodically gave heat more often. Only a samurai died in a battle that was considered an honor for him, but the percentage deaths were not so great, for as we already mentioned, any samurai was great, prepared for everything. Warriors who, regardless of the situation, continued. Training life of our Shinzo was not sweet, but compared to some historical epics he lived very cool. Well, we will live great if you like the video. Offer other warriors to parse into comments. Until we meet again, friends.